Hello, my name is Andrew Katinsky. I am the Director of Information Security Services for NC State University. One of my responsibilities in this role is to manage the implementation and application of the various policies required for compliance at the university. With departments like student billing, university dining, bookstores, and university advancement, all accepting credit cards for payments and donations to the university, the PCI standard compliance falls solely in the lap of Security and Compliance Department to ensure that these controls are being met across the board. So, what is PCI DSS? The PCI DSS is actually an acronym for the Payment Card Industry's Data Security Standard. The standard was originally published in June of 2006 as a way to provide a common set of industry tools and measurements to ensure safe handling of sensitive information. The PCI DSS is a multifaceted security standard that covers various requirements for security management, policies, procedures, the architecture, the network, software design, and other critical protective measures to meet this compliance. It was established by the credit card industry as a joint effort, kind of in response to an increase in identity theft and credit card fraud. That problem remains a huge issue today, and unfortunately it seems to be a losing battle going forward. So every merchant who handles credit card data is responsible for safeguarding that data, and they can be held liable for security compromises, and they must comply with the DSS. Depending on the size of your organization, the amount of credit cards you take on a regular basis, the amount of revenue generated by these credit cards can all dictate the level of compliance that's required for your particular institution or business. And compliance with these rules, if not able to meet these requirements, can also affect the rate at which the credit card companies will bill you moving forward, as far as how much per transaction they may charge. A business or organization that is compliant, smaller, will have a much less percentage per transaction, as opposed to one that isn't able to meet the requirements and the potential for loss and risk is greater, thus increasing the cost per transaction. When you multiply that cost per transaction over thousands or hundreds of thousands of transactions per year, that number can really add up, really kind of making it worthwhile for the organizations to try and meet those goals. All right, so what are the PCI requirements? So there are 12 base requirements, and they're each broken up into among 6 different main categories. Each of these have several different pieces and parts underneath it. The first one is to build and maintain a secure network and systems. The second one is simply to protect cardholder data. Next one is to make sure that you're maintaining a vulnerability management program, and you're implementing strong access control measures to make sure that the people accessing the systems are who they are and who they should be. It ensures that they're regularly monitoring and testing the networks, and that you're maintaining a general information security policy for your organization, not just the PCI DSS. All right, so let's go through all of these a little bit at a time. And again, this is kind of a high-level overview of these controls as we go through them. All right, so the first one, build and maintain secure network systems and network and systems. The first part of that is Section 1. It's install and maintain firewall configurations to protect cardholder data. Basically, it's to define and manage the firewall and network router configurations. The purpose, obviously, for the firewall is to scan all network traffic, to block untrusted network traffic, and access to the secured systems. Part of this requirement is to maintain a current set of network diagrams and change control for those network diagrams, specifically around the PCI systems that you're maintaining control over. The second part of that is to maintain the current data flow diagrams. Data flow diagrams are not the same as network diagrams. The network diagrams are basically a physical representation of the network as it pertains to how the network systems are connected. The other one is indicating how data flows in and out of those different systems throughout the network. It also wants to ensure that you're maintaining network segmentation between cardholder systems, considered the CDE, the cardholder data environment, and the rest of the network. It also has provisions to ensure that there are network configuration reviews every 6 months, and that all inbound and outbound traffic must be accounted for from the network in the data flow diagrams. The second part of this is change vendor supplied defaults from system passwords and other security parameters. This one is kind of, we would consider a given, but it really needs to be looked into. The idea here is to ensure that all the manufacturer default passwords, any out-of-the-box default encryption keys are changed. The default configurations are changed. There is no default admin password or to your configuration network, systems, servers, appliances that may be inside that system. It also ensures that only the necessary services and processes are active on the systems, and all those processes have a business case and justification. If SSH is open on a system, there has to be a business justification to why SSH is open on that system and explicit allow in the firewall. This control also requires you to have an inventory of all the systems, processes, and components that are in scope for PCI. So it's not simply having a list of systems that are in PCI scope, but a definition of what those systems do, what processes and software are installed in those systems, and how they're used to conduct business in your environment. Section 2 consists of 2 more parts. It's protecting the stored cardholder data. In a perfect world, you shouldn't be storing any cardholder data in your environment anyway. But basically this refers to any cardholder data at rest. Basically, if you're writing credit card numbers down, if you're storing them in a system for processing and removing, you have to make sure that all efforts are being done, that you're avoiding storing this data. And if you do, it's protected with encryption, masking, or other critical components around protecting that PAN, or primary account number, for your users. The basic idea is that there is an intruder does access your network and your data without the possession of the proper cryptographic keys or pins. There's no way for them to be able to render that data usable. The second part is encrypting transmission of the cardholder data over the network. This is basically data in motion. Whenever you're accepting a data, cardholder data or transaction or performing transactions on the network, or any communication between all of the systems within your PCI environment, all of this must be done using encrypted transmissions. In this day and age, it's more and more common that systems are doing this, but one of the provisions that this currently maintains is that anything lower than TLS 1.2 must be remediated. For environments like a university system where there's a lot of older systems, it's actually kind of a chore to be able to weed out systems that aren't able to talk on TLS 1.2 or higher. The next section basically is your vulnerability management program, protecting all the systems against malware, performing updates, and antivirus. Pretty self-explanatory. The idea is you want to ensure that you're running current antivirus, anti-malware software, any network protection, IDS, IPS might be in place, and that those systems are actually being updated and monitored regularly. Make sure the patterns are put in place. EDR systems, systems that are validating processes, are becoming more prevalent, but they're still looking for software that's sitting on the boxes that don't really belong there. The only exception to that rule is things like PIN terminals. If you've got a cash register with a card swipe machine, obviously those systems have embedded software. They're not susceptible as easily as a normal system to security vulnerability or a virus. So there are exceptions around that rule. The other side is developing and maintaining secure systems and applications. Basically, this is making sure that you're doing secure coding, you're following best practice when doing system development and building, you're patching in a timely manner. Critical and high patches must be done within 30 days of the release and must be verified. Code reviews and web application scanning are done regularly. Vulnerability scanning is done on a regular basis. And all development processes must be documented and followed. And the confidentiality and integrity of the CIA triangle are actually the most important in this case. Availability, however, is really only a business concern in this particular case. If the system isn't available and it can't be accessed, then there is no threat to the data being compromised at that point, or that's the view of the PCI organization. Fourth is implement secure access control measures, restricting access to cardholder data to only authorized personnel. This is basically least privileged, need-to-know basis. You want to ensure that the critical data can only be accessed by authorized personnel. Proper account management is in place. That brings us to identifying and authenticating access to system components. This basically ensures that your identity and access management practice is in place, documented properly. The accounts are given least privilege. They're only limited to be able to access the data that they need specific access to. Ensures that all the auditing and logging is done on all the user accounts and access to the systems. It must be audited and verified regularly. Passwords must be complex and changed regularly. And it kind of brings us to requesting the physical access of the cardholder data. This one kind of pertains to things like access to the data center. Access to the data center must be housed in a secure location. Access must be recorded, must be either videotaped or stored elsewhere, escorted access only. The process also contains things like properly disposing of backups, who has access to the backups of your systems, disposing of media if a hard drive fails or a system needs to be sent to surplus, that the data is properly disposed of and cleaned, and actually also pertains to things like clean desk policy to ensure that sensitive data may not be lying around on people's desks. Section 5 is regularly monitor and test. Right? This is basically your tracking and monitoring controls to audit everything. If it happens on a box, it should be monitored. If it didn't happen to a box, it should probably also be monitored. This includes systems like the firewalls, IDS, IPS, file integrity monitoring for making sure that system changes are audited and there's a change management process for any process on a system. The antivirus, physical access controls are properly logged. And all these logs must be readily accessible within a year, and anything longer than that must follow your company's data retention policy. Testing security systems and processes regularly. This is basically tabletop exercises, doing your vulnerability management scanning to ensure compliance. Vulnerability scans need to be done internally, quarterly, and externally quarterly. External scans must be done by an approved scanning vendor, an ASV, which is certified by the PCI organization to ensure that they're doing the test properly from the outside. All wireless scanning must be done, looking for rogue wireless systems to ensure that people aren't standing up alternate wireless devices. This also includes an annual penetration test requirement to validate the network, segmentation, patching, patch management, validation of scope, the inventory. And rescans should be done whenever significant changes are made to the systems. And Section 6 is basically ensuring that you're maintaining an information security policy, that your corporation or business has a set of policies. Users know where those policies are located, how to access them. It includes things like backups and system maintenance, business continuity and recovery, incident response procedures, and that there's a standardized way these documents are being developed and stored. And it also includes that the annual PCI awareness training specific to users of the PCI environment is done annually and tracked to make sure that people know where the policies are and where to get them. Really, basically, the bottom line is that this is just a framework. Internally, your organization has to determine the best way to meet these controls. And unfortunately, ignorance to the rules doesn't exempt you from being able to meet them. Anyway, I thank you for your time. Attached a couple of the references to the PCI standards and DSS. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Thank you.